beyond a point, every technology over time will get commoditized, and the simple existence of that technology will not remain a differentiator.
So if we were imagining a situation where there is one tool that helps me manage all my library, all my content. It allows me to put subtitles for all my videos. It allows me to dub my videos into the languages that are relevant. It allows me to publish over a reel versus a YouTube short versus a Instagram post and stuff like that. So not just production and editing, but also distribution, dissemination, and also management of your library.
Yeah. So founders are going to use this as a point of leverage and say all of these things: efficiency, creativity unlocked, hyper-personalization. Like, if these are the things at my disposal, what can I do with it? And solve customer problems, consumer problems, create new experiences, which Tarun spoke about. There's enough room to create value.
I think companies who are able to adapt to AI and take that platform shift and make that their first nature, I think are the ones that will continue to do well. It is all of us. I think we have to be careful not to invest in stuff that looks cool but will end up being a utility.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of examples from Web 1 and Web 2 where stuff that actually is utility, but they just aren't large businesses.
Okay guys, welcome to the second segment of AI in media and social. So just to recap, last time we talked about AI in media and social, the quality, quantity curve, we talked about modality, we talked about personalization, etc. We're going to spend some more time on those topics, but we'll also add a flavor in of what do we mean by workflow depth, what kind of stakeholders we are building for, what should founders look at when they're looking to size up opportunities. Yeah. It's funny you say it's hard to pinpoint because I'm going to get us to pinpoint now. So let's take a couple of stakeholders and sort of look under the hood, right? I know we talk a lot about workflow depth and we talk a lot about how, there are some SaaS-like characteristics that could be interesting for AI companies to look at building. So I think first, let's just sort of define what workflow depth means for us. And then I'd like to open the OTT hood. I'd like to open the creator hood. I'd like to open the social media hood and look inside and figure out what kind of companies could emerge, right? So we keep mentioning workflow depth. A lot of people have raised their hands and said, what do you mean by workflow depth? I think it's useful for us to just unpack that and create parallels so that we can create a mental structure around the same.
So I'll share at a high level. Maybe he can give more specific examples. I think in my mind, we saw this playing out in enterprise SaaS also, right? See, beyond a point, every technology over time will get commoditized, and the simple existence of that technology will not remain a differentiator. And we saw that literally, especially in this space. To the point where we saw this company which was doing stuff around music, right? We've seen other companies do similar stuff. Over time, what I think we all have realized is that this technology is cool, but it's not sufficient to create a large or to unlock large value. It's a great utility, but how do you build a business model around it is unclear. And I think we can borrow from what we've seen in enterprise software over there, which is over time, multiple things also become fairly commoditized there, right? Ticketing systems and ABC.
Yep.
But what really makes it valuable is A, integrations, and B, workflows, right? In my mind, I think we will see some version of that play out over here. Companies/founders will need to identify their ideal customer. They will need to build deep workflow depth for that particular niche use case, lock in themselves to the process of pre-creation, creation, post-creation, and in that, there is value to be done, right? So I'll give you an example. We haven't announced the investment, so I can't name it yet, but we're investing in a company that is helping creators create comic content, right? Now, what's the biggest issue in comic content today, right? The biggest issue in comic content is once you kind of visualize the characters and have a storyline, it takes time to do a frame-by-frame screen sort of play of that, right? And actually visualize each screen and then bring out the storyline. That is the number one bottleneck. Now, if I can use generative AI and build tooling on top of these foundational models to say, I've got creator X, I've got the storyline, just through prompt engineering, can I basically just create almost real-time, everyday episodes of my favorite comic content at scale, right? And serve that in a friendly mobile TikTok style scrollable format. Now for that, the technology by itself is not, it's going to get commoditized. What's going to be valuable is the tooling and the workflows which are relevant and specific for creators who are building this comic content.
Yeah.
Right. And I think whether it's collaboration, whether it's approval flows, whether it's whatever, like the part of the editing process, I think that is what will create value, hopefully. And I think there we will see more companies getting created.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I was also looking to just break down the creator value chain, right? From, let's take a YouTube creator. Storyboard the idea, shoot, take 2 days, then he'll take another 2 days to sort of edit that, cut that, put the right thumbnails, put the right sort of edits in, and then publish it, right? When we say workflow depth, in my mind, I simplify that to how important is the tool to the creator or the stakeholder in their day-to-day routine, right? How much are they using it? How much of their life is dependent on it? So if we were imagining a situation where there is one tool that helps me manage all my library, all my content. It allows me to put subtitles for all my videos. It allows me to dub my videos into the languages that are relevant. It allows me to publish over a reel versus a YouTube short versus a Instagram post and stuff like that. So not just production and editing, but also distribution, dissemination, and also management of your library. The more the number of boxes that you can tick mark in that as part of your workflow depth, the more relevant and useful it is for the creator. And
then, sorry to layer in, and then intelligence such that there is a feedback loop which keeps helping you create better and better quality content based on actual real world live data in terms of how things are actually,
Absolutely. So there should be, the system literally should be able to look at your YouTube data and say, this 20-minute video has generated better views than some of the others. Here's a quick 10 short videos that you can put on top of this content. We found engagement spiking at this second. Let's just put it out and here it's ready for you.
Yeah.
Click to sort of post, right? I think for me, that exercise that we did internally helped me sort of understand how deep the workflow depth can actually be, right? And how it's different for each stakeholder. It's different from an enterprise versus a creator. I was actually wondering if there are other examples. So how would it look like for an OTT or a social media platform?
I think just to stick to the example Tarun picked up, right? And because you said that this question comes up a lot, that what does workflow depth mean? I'll just take a quick 2 minutes to elaborate more on that with slightly more double click on it, right? Now that same comic use case, you can think of workflow horizontally. So that's one. And the other is a technical depth.
Absolutely.
Right? So the technical depth is basically saying that, hey, you have foundational models which can do image, text to image, but can they do consistency of images, which is what is needed when you're putting together multiple frames of a comic?
Yeah.
They can't. First level of scaffolding which needs to be done. Can they do control on posing of the characters?
Yeah.
They cannot. You can't get that degree of control. That's a third scaffolding that someone is doing. Can they do multiple characters in a single frame and maintain all of this?
Yeah.
So I think, the investing company that we're talking about, that's a technical depth they're building on that workflow. It's a singular workflow of saying that, hey, how do you get from text to comic? So one is this depth, when you have to think of what all needs to happen to get to an output which matters, right? The other is exactly as you said, production, post-production, distribution.
Well, that's a usual useful mental framework. Basically, there's a horizontal in which you do more things for them. Or there's a vertical where you do stuff that is so incredibly hard that they need to be dependent on you. My inference then is what we don't like is things that can get commoditized super soon, right? It's not horizontal enough, it's not difficult enough a problem to solve for vertically, and hence there's not much value to be captured.
And on horizontal, the other piece is not just horizontal enough. See, when you think of horizontal, when you go down that value chain, right, you have multiple stakeholders. It's like what we keep on saying, single player versus multiplayer workflows. When you go horizontal, you have to solve for multiplayer workflows, right? It's not just a single person. You're collaborating with someone, which is what from an enterprise SaaS lens Tarun alluded to. So it's also that element, saying that if you build which is a multiplayer and you build enough depth on the problem statement to be solved, that's a compelling value creation vector.
Yeah, but so let me pose a reverse question, because a lot of these workflows are sort of dependent on foundational models, right? And the big techs in some form. I guess the elephant in the room is how much value will be left on the table, right? So it'll be useful to just unpack that a bit. I know we've got our own points of view on core tech versus application layer, etc. But I think it's a useful distinction to have on, what's left on the table for me to sort of build on.
Yeah, so I think there better be enough, otherwise. So I look at this a little bit, I guess, just more first principles, right? I think in my mind, if I were to just break AI, it's basically having literally large proprietary data sets, billions of gigabytes of data, and then the ability to invest in advanced computing capability, right? The combination of these two is what allows one to sort of build AI models on top. Who has large proprietary data sets? Incumbents. Who has potentially large resources to invest in advanced computing capabilities? Again, sort of the larger ones. So I think there is an argument to be made that there is clearly a advantage to incumbents. I think the big tech guys will look bigger 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as a result of this. Just the way a lot of Facebook was a web company, even at the time of IPO, it became mobile first only after that, and actually all the value creation came post, right? I think companies who are able to adapt to AI and take that platform shift and make that their first nature, I think are the ones that will continue to do well. So I was just reading, in fact, today, one of the reports that was circulated internally was on how Chinese companies are set up for capturing AI, and Baidu is supposedly
front runner
over there, followed by obviously ByteDance and then Tencent and Alibaba, right? So my sense is there is definitely an argument to be made that when it comes to some of the more foundational stuff, when it comes to some of the more infrastructure like the cloud, all of that, AI cloud, etc., I think there is a argument to be made that big tech will have an advantage. Thankfully, I don't think it'll end there. I think there will be a lot of use cases, niches within that. We gave the example of comic content. We've invested in Murph, which is doing text to speech. I think there are 100 different examples where if we take each sliver of every industry, whether it's better ad targeting, whether it's better marketing efficiency, whether it's better different sort of layers of content creation across different segments. I think there will be a lot of application layer companies that will get created with better tooling, better workflows, which are suitable to that or extremely unique to that particular workflow. I think those are the opportunities where most likely we will find opportunities. I don't know, Akash, if you feel differently.
I broadly agree, but I think, again, all of us have been entrepreneurs in the past, and anecdotally, every time this shift has happened, it's the same situation we have.
Yes.
Actually, it's not
It
too
seems,
different.
Yeah.
It always seems that the incumbents have the advantage.
Like an IBM will have an advantage, or a
Every
Xerox
time-
will have an
every time it
advantage.
seems-
Then an
Actually,
Apple
that's
will
a
come
great
in.
point.
Yeah.
There were mobile first companies created by startups as well, right? And so maybe we will see AI for startups that will also come.
So I think that's the only, anecdotally, we've seen enough. So I would say maybe we'll see new big tech companies also emerge, and highly likely, again, historical evidence. But yeah, broadly in agreement on saying that, hey, there are enough value pools to capture. Work customer backwards. TD spoke about Murph. We earlier spoke about the other company that we invested in, which is doing webcomics. Now, these are things where you're going AI first. And you're saying, how can I use this as a point of leverage as a founder to create value and build an enterprise which can extract value because I'm creating value. And it is meaningfully large enough, right? So founders are going to use this as a point of leverage and say all of these things: efficiency, creativity unlocked, hyper personalization. If these are the things at my disposal, what can I do with it and solve customer problems, consumer problems, create new experiences, which Tarun spoke about? There's enough room to create value.
Yeah, I echo that part. I think I'm more optimistic than the both of you guys on new companies and new value creation. I think there are certain signals you want to look for if you want to look at deep enough value pools, right? One of it could just be Like we saw this example of, I think the company is called Magnify.ai, right? They literally work very closely with sports broadcasters who've got a ton of IP, right? And they help them create content out of that IP. All the historical IP. I want to see all off drives played by Sachin Tendulkar against off spin, right? And then you could just extract all of that out. That allows for me as a user, maybe I want to see sport in a different way versus how you see it. And that is a big signal for me to say, are there these vertical applications that are still very large as a size of price on sports is huge, right? And there's a lot of proprietary data here. That's not going to go through just the big tech. Somebody's going to have to come and build value on that, right? So I can clearly see vertical pools exist, one basis proprietary data. Any other signals that are useful for an entrepreneur to look at to say, maybe there's something here. I should look under the hood and figure out if there's more value.
I would say if you play to that democratization of pooling, right, it's limited purely by your own imagination. So if you especially go back to media and social, as an entrepreneur, just pick, it's limited by your imagination. You spoke about sports. We already have companies doing multiple other things. It's almost like in gaming. In gaming, we have seen, it's not that gaming stops, right? Or gaming company creation ever stopped. You have big incumbents, you have large publishers, and yet every few years we keep creating bigger and larger gaming companies. It's the same thing. I think media social, you don't have any restriction or limitation. It's going to be limited by founders' creativity and imagination of experiences, unlocking creativity, personalization. Just play to those vectors. Go first principle at it. I think there is enough to chase and build value.
So I'll tell you what I like, and generally the way I look at it is anything that. So step back, right? When you're looking at a new space and you are asking yourself what's going to create value, right? I think the framework I like to apply to myself is two, and maybe this comes a little bit because I also spend time on marketplaces. So I ask myself, is there a 10x new experience for the customer that is getting enabled as a result of this? And we saw, with marketplaces, how that played out. Right? Second, is there incremental value capture for the supplier, which in this case would be the content creator, right? And value capture could be both in terms of dollars, it could be in terms of time, it could be in terms of greater earnings, right? So I think if I were to apply this, and it's a fairly simplistic model, but when I look at these two things, and then I apply what we earlier spoke about, which is cost and time to create content is going to trend towards zero. My sense is a trifecta of these three things is going to actually create new companies that, at least to me, that is what I will look for, which is, can I create, like for example, again, I'm just going back to the same example, right? I don't think the company we invested in was a viable investment until generative AI. Right? And we'll see how it works out. It's still very early, but for example, without generative AI, I don't think there was an unlock possible where I could create new comic content every single day in a serialized fashion, real time, at a cost which made it economically viable, where the customer was willing to pay for it, right? With generative AI, I think it's possible to do that, where every morning I wake up, just where, like, people spend 10 minutes on their social feeds. I think if I'm someone who likes reading comic content every day, before I sleep, when I wake up, whatever, I'm taking a lunch break, I want to see fresh content every day. That wasn't possible. I had to wait for 1 month till the new edition of that comic book or that webtoons or whatever came out. That's when I would be able to consume it. So to me, that's an example of a new 10x consumer experience that gets unlocked as a result. And where I think even on the creator side of it, there is a economic unlock that is happening. So I think at the intersection of that is where I'm most excited.
Potentially also allows us to monetize differently,
right?
Because it means different for each user. You could potentially charge for that consumer surplus in some form. So different kinds of monetization could also unlock.
So I think that's at least the theme that I'm most excited by.
Got it. And if you were to sort of wrap all these points together, what are the themes we like? What are the companies we like? I think it's also useful to sort of put out there things that are interesting to us. So how would you describe, these are the kinds of companies I'm looking at, these are the kinds of segments that are really interesting?
For me, it's the same thing, honestly. I don't think that I have a different answer there. I think it is all of us. I think we have to be careful not to invest in stuff that looks cool, but will end up being a utility.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of examples from Web 1 and Web 2 where stuff that actually is utility, but they just aren't large businesses.
Yeah.
And there are great utilities at that, right? I think we will see even more of that happening in the AI world. But I think what will create value is if you just again go back to his point on just customer backwards, value creation, first principles. I think, is there a 10x unlock that is happening for the consumer? And is there a 10x unlock for the creator happening in terms of economic value capture?
Yeah.
For me, that themes is the most exciting.
No, and with those two principles covered, I would just add one more third principle, especially for a founder perspective, would be, if you're a founder, you should think hard about, again, the technical depth.
Yeah.
And which goes back to some things become
Yeah.
too utility or too democratized. If you're just a wrapper on top of, so I don't know the answer to what for sure, it's more first principles.
But if we knew, we would be building it.
Yeah. And what not for sure is where you are just a thin wrapper, right? Where it might seem super cool, it might seem that it is a multifold jump on the status quo, but it does not have the technical depth. It is just a wrapper on top of foundational stuff. Those things are going to be super hard. And it's not that they will not capture value. Some of those are already capturing, like there are people who have just built hundreds of tools. There are multiple websites where people are tracking these, which are already capturing like $100,000, $200,000 monthly, right?
Yeah.
But these are not long lasting.
Yeah.
They're not durable, right? Because they're just wrappers.
Yeah.
So I think that is the other thing, at least.
Yeah, so there is a real sense of depth that we're looking at. Either vertically there's a technical skill set, or it's just so, like you said, the multiplayer strategy, right? There's depth there. The wrappers we feel will end up being boutique businesses, potentially not for us. I think we are running out of time, and I know we can keep imagining and keep going on for hours on this, but let's end this session here. I'd like to just give a call out. If you are building the space of AI in general, we do have a running list of companies that we track. Do write into us, and we are happy to include you in that list. It's just a globally viewable list. It'll help other founders, people interested in the segment, to reach out to you. Leave a comment, send us a mail, always happy to include you. Also, if you have interesting ideas and you're looking to start up in the space, or if you just want to grab coffee and put on the imagination hats with us, we're happy to do that as well. Please feel free to reach out to us. Write in, comment, we'll find you. And that's it. Any closing notes?
No, excited, and I think for a lot of us who've been doing this now for some time, this really seems like a serious delta shift in sort of the kind of companies and the kind of value creation.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.